Hello and welcome to this Crypto Insider interview. I am Vlad and my guest today is R.L. Bryer, and he goes by the name the Pittsburgh Hodlr or the Pittsburgh Hodlr, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And he has been in the space since 2010, which is impressive. And we had this preparation talk before this, and he said that he was in high school at the time. But it's still exciting that he got involved at this early stage and has seen the evolution of how Bitcoin has evolved all throughout these years. So, hello.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Vlad. I was actually in college when I got started at the end of 2009, but yeah, I really appreciate you having me on the program today. I've been following your work for a while now.
Oh, thank you. But how did you find out about Bitcoin in 2009? At the time, there wasn't much going on.
Yeah, there was very, very little news at the point at that point in 2009. I think I first learned about it. I got on my computer one day. I came home from class. I was studying at university here in the United States, and I think it was just a regular news article or a YouTube video. I honestly don't remember what article or what video I saw, but I remember where I was, and one of my friends was there at the time at my place, and I remember the first conversation I had about Bitcoin. I said, "Man, have you heard about this Bitcoin thing? I think it, has the potential to be really important." And we had a short talk about it, and then kind of I looked into it more, but didn't really dig in for another year or so. When I was getting more and more into like how the world works, and we were coming off the financial crisis here in the United States.
That's impressive. It took me so much longer to get into it. I was also in college, and I think it was 2014 or 2015 that actually one of my university professors told me to do a presentation about Bitcoin and what the blockchain does and what it means and how it can revolutionize the way we distribute data. And at the time, it felt just like homework to me. I research this, I do a presentation, I write a paper, I get a grade, and that's it. I move on with my life. And honestly, I didn't put too much attention into it. I just looked up some articles, and then I read some bad coverage from the Wall Street Journal and The Economist and websites, which at the time were referencing the events going on with Mount Gox and how the price had fallen so much that it's very likely that there will be no recovery. So I didn't get involved financially. It felt very irrational at the time, and it's not like I had too much money. I was just a broke college student doing classes. But then again, what does that friend of yours who was there when you discovered Bitcoin, what does he do right now? Is he still involved? Also, did you buy any at the time?
Yeah, he's actually. I just talked to him the other day. He's still buying himself, and we talk a lot about it. He's actually one of the first people that urged me. I've been writing about it just some since like I started producing my own content. I was putting stuff out on Facebook and Twitter in 2009, 2010, but I didn't start actually producing like articles and like blogs until 2014. And then in the last few years, he was urging me to start a vlog, so I did that. But yeah, he's buying still. He's still in the space, so that's really cool that we can look back on that, and just measure how far we've come. And then back to the news a little bit though, like you were talking about how it was kind of skewed, or they were only producing news at that point, putting out news. It's the mainstream media still, it's like a relic of old. That's why we do what we do. But there was only like I remember in 2010, you could go 2 maybe 3 weeks and there wouldn't even be a new piece of news, literature, video, anything about cryptocurrency. It's like looking back now, it's just like, it's amazing how far we've come, because now you could spend all day almost probably all day, every day for a year, and you wouldn't even get all the news about Bitcoin. So it's like, and then now we have what 2,500 other cryptocurrencies or whatever the number is. I'm not sure, but yeah. So it's just like that. That's one of the things that really shows me how far we've come is like looking back on 2010 in that time frame and looking back and just seeing that one article every 3 weeks or whatever it was, and there were only a handful of cryptocurrencies. Litecoin wasn't even out in 2010, so I think when it came out in 2011, and then we got a few more cryptocurrencies. There's a few that have gone by the wayside since then. Yeah, it was just really neat to see how far we've come.
Were you also on the Bitcoin Talk forums, or do you still have the posts that you have made on Facebook in 2010? Because I guess that's history in the making. You were one of the first people who wrote about it publicly. And
Yeah,
what were the reactions that you got? And I would love to read them, by the way.
yeah, I actually moved on from that Facebook account, unfortunately. I should go back in there and grab those one day. But I think there's probably some on Twitter if I scroll down far enough. I do have the article from like 2014 and stuff like that still. It's on Medium. I'll have to send it over to you. Maybe you could put it in the link or something like that. Because that's cool. That's still 5 years ago. But having the stuff from back then is definitely neat to see. What was your second question? I'm sorry.
If you're on Bitcoin Talk, and I
No,
guess,
I was on the forums and stuff, but I wasn't making a lot of posts back then. I was still like basically trying to figure out, if this could work. I didn't have like a program or background or anything. So I was looking at it more from like the economic side, and like the I study Austrian economics, and that's what led me into this whole
okay,
space.
that makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
was doing political science.
So
Nobody
you
was
understand?
charging us to look out for sound money.
Yeah, exactly. So
But
Ron Paul's actually I was a Ron Paul supporter here. I'm sure you know Ron Paul,
of
and
course,
yeah, there's a lot of Americans that got their economic education around my age bracket, especially. I just turned 33, and so I was studying Austrian economics after he led me to Murray Rothbard and Mises and Hans Hoppe and all those guys. And I was like, man, I wish it was such a bleak time. And like I said, we were coming off a financial crisis, and I was like, we don't have real money anywhere. Nowhere in the world has real money. And how are we going to solve these problems of money by decree? So that's really when I went back and looked at Bitcoin and the blockchain and how using decentralization and money as a language could really like solve virtually the most important problem in the world.
that's impressive. But
Thank you.
you have missed a once in a lifetime opportunity to talk to Satoshi, because at the time he was active on the forums. And if you posted anything, it's likely that he would have responded.
That's definitely something I missed out on. I never had any personal interactions with Satoshi, unless it's Nick Szabo, which we talked about before we came on here today, and we were mentioning him on Twitter. He just retweeted something I put out the other day, and I know you've had some talks with him yourself, with articles and stuff. So maybe I have ran into him since then. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, but if you read his blog, he suspects that it might have been Wei Dai or Hal Finney.
Yeah, I sort of lean towards Hal Finney, but either way, Nick Szabo definitely laid a lot of the groundwork for where we are today with pioneering his stuff.
But he was so close with BitGold. It was just a matter of doing some small tweaks and you would have had Bitcoin.
Which leads me to believe that he could have been one of the instrumental people still. And whoever it was a genius not to put themselves out there. I think that took a lot of courage to, and just not needing the validation from everyone. That shows what kind of person or what kind of group of people it was, that they don't need the recognition. It was more for the utilitarian good. I'm not a big fan of the word utilitarianism, but that is like real utilitarianism there.
Yeah, that's true, but it's aligning to the spirit of cypherpunks when the 80s and 90s were trying to build private technology and protect themselves with encryption. And it makes a lot of sense to re- release something that doesn't leave any traces and doesn't give acknowledgement to a real person. But then again, there might be a young Japanese guy whose name is Satoshi Nakamoto, which is like John Smith in
Yeah.
any English-speaking country.
I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time on it anymore. For the first couple of years, I was like a big mystery to everybody, including myself. Everybody kind of wondered who it was. But after you've been around, now it's been almost a decade or whatever. Maybe it has now been a decade. I don't count. Um, it doesn't really matter to me anymore, to be honest with you. I would like to know, though. I mean, it would be cool to know, but I respect their anonymity.
So tell me about your book. You have written a book which is called Blockchain Project Renaissance, and it's on Amazon. You can buy it on your Kindle. And I didn't get to read from it, but this only means that I give it a chance to describe it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to send you a copy over so you can check it out when you get some spare time. I know you're a busy guy. Yeah, it's on Amazon, like you said, Blockchain Project Renaissance. I was talking to a friend last summer, and actually it was like last spring, and we got into a little talk about cryptocurrencies, and I've met I was trying to think about this the other day, thousands of people in the last year alone since I've really started pushing my content out in the space, and we were having this discussion about, I said, hey, I'm thinking about writing a book. What do you think? And he said, yeah, I'd buy it. And he actually bought it right then and there before it was even written. So I decided to write this book, and it's about my genesis in the space and all the fundamental, the most important things that I could think of in blockchain and cryptocurrency, and just trying to put my knowledge into a book. This is volume 1. It's just under 50 pages, so it's not a super long read. I wanted it to be digestible for people so they could get through it if they were like eager to. A lot of people get FOMO. They get that fear of missing out when the price goes up, and I saw a lot of people last year being taken advantage of. Actually, a little more over a year, but so when the last bull run happened, I saw a lot of people get scammed, and I said, how can I help these people, and how can I get my knowledge out to the masses? So that was my goal, and it's done pretty well. I've been selling it a lot myself too, and I'm pretty happy with the success of the first one, and I'm writing the second one now, where I'm going to get more into the intricacies of blockchain. This first one was more of like why I think it's good money, explaining more of the Austrian side of it, and just the reason why I think it has this network effect, and why the price will eventually reach some pretty high figures, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Why it's a great asset class in itself.
That sounds interesting, but what did you focus on more exactly, and why is it a renaissance?
Well, the way I look at it is this is our great opportunity, and maybe one of the last, if we don't seize this one, to have like a rebirth of capitalism. And I'm a big guy on, obviously I've talked about the Austrian school and free markets, and in my opinion, you can't have real freedom if you can't transact freely. So the nexus of capitalism is voluntary exchange, and I view Bitcoin as the best money we've ever had. So I think that's really the focus, in my opinion, is like using Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, the decentralized ones, to transact freely and have a free society.
Yeah. Do you have any other cryptocurrencies that you think are great?
Yeah, I actually have. I don't divulge too much about what I have, but I'm interested in a few different things. I was actually one of the first people. I was probably one of the first people to get into Bitcoin, but I was definitely one of the first few hundred people I would imagine to own any Litecoin. So I still like Litecoin too. Um, I didn't jump on Ethereum. I think Ethereum's really interesting still. I'm interested in Ethereum, and I think EOS is going to be really important too. A little bit better version maybe of Ethereum. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out. I also am interested in Steam. I think that what they did for social media on Steam and stuff is like, that's obviously another Dan Larimer project, like super pioneering stuff. Like I I always wanted, I wish I had that in 2010 and stuff. To look back on that would have been even better. I was wanting something like that back then. So the people that are getting to utilize that today I'm on there as well at Pittsburgh Hodlr. Um, Follow me on there if you get a chance. But yeah, that and there's a handful of things that I'm interested in, maybe like 10 or 15 that I think have a lot of potential.
Okay. When I got into Steemit, and that was in late 2017, I think, I didn't, at first I thought it was very interesting, and I thought it would spell the end of Reddit and Facebook, as you have that social media component, but also a blogging platform. And it's really interesting how it works and how communities develop. And there was this moment when they even had like the SBD, the Steam dollar, which was by default a stable coin that was always $1.
Yeah.
And it was interesting at the time, but then I realized that the network was being taken over by bots. And if you wanted any post that you made to become popular, you had to pay to some kind of re-steam service, re-steam meaning retweet or something. So you needed to pay a bot service to actually make you popular. And most of the times you invested an amount of Steam to pay that bot, but you never got something equivalent in return. So it was a bad investment. It was just, sometimes I did it just hoping that I would increase my following and get a wider audience. But then I discovered that the people following me were also bots. So I wasn't really excited to discover that they have exploited this component and it's not really filled with real people, at least not in the fields that I was writing about. It was more about bots and being on the right side of re-steam whales. That's what they call them.
Yeah, I understand that criticism of it. That is one of the that's probably the most prominent criticism of Steemit actually that I've heard. A lot of the long-time guys complain about that. I got on there actually after you in December last year. So I've actually had a fair amount of success on there, and I did try out the bots as you said yourself. You know, giving it see how I did with those, and I didn't find it worth it either. But the important thing on there is to catch the eye of a whale or one of the moderators, because if they have I post everything, all of my vlogs to DTube. That's one of the places I post on there, which is a DApp of Steem, the Steem blockchain. So yeah, I enjoy it though. I've actually met quite a few people on there, and they're holding their own conferences now and stuff. So I still have a lot. I think if they can figure that out, though, they'll definitely have more of a draw. That is part of it, but that's kind of like where we are. We're still in the infancy of like this whole thing. So hopefully, what's his name, the guy who's a part of that, Ned, he can figure that out, because I think Dan's pretty much gone from that scene now.
Yeah, I guess Dan Larimer has this tendency to create projects and after a few months leave and start
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, I guess he gets bored. I don't know. He did what he got bitch. He did bitch shares, and I think he just like hands them off. His dad's doing some stuff with his dad's Stan. I think he's got some stuff going on himself. So he like you said, he creates these things. definitely one of the smartest guys in the space, though. Uh, I think that can be documented with all the money that was given to him just to create EOS. It's like
Oh
$5 billion. There's a lot of trust there.
there is, and
Yeah,
I'm not sure if EOS is necessarily reaching its goal. It's a very competent platform to host decentralized applications, and it's great for smart contracts, but it has that scalability issue about which I read, I think, yesterday from Jameson Lopp. And he said that they have reached, I think, 6 terabyte blocks or something, and there are only a handful of node block producers, or what do you call them? The people
yeah.
who validate the transactions. And there are only a handful of them who host the entire history of transactions.
Mhm.
And they're not really making the same kind of money that they used to. And the financial model of incentives doesn't really work anymore. And they need to either pump the price so that the rewards increase, and it makes much more sense for them to continue their activity, or this system is going to run, without making any profit.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's one of the problems with EOS or EOS, however you want to say it. The centralization, I think there are only 21 nodes. Does that sound right to you? I don't follow EOS or EOS really super closely, but that's what makes Bitcoin what it is become, and why it's withstood the test of time is it's more decentralized than even the ones that is being created today.
Yeah, but you have been here for 9 years or something, almost 9 years. And I guess you have been very quiet if you didn't decide to go to conferences and talk about how you got in early and express your experiences early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't quiet if you're on my Facebook and stuff, but I didn't feel I'm not a big travel guy. I decided that I might try to hit a few conferences this year and finally start going to some stuff, but it's not that important to me to be like the center of attention or anything like that. I'm not one of those people that really need to be out there but to cover what's going on and meet some of the people like you and some of my other friends that I've met in the space. That would be one of the reasons I would definitely like to start, just for the camaraderie of it. But honestly, a lot of these I feel like they're overpriced, and I don't feel the need. I can watch all the lectures online, and I have a dog, so traveling isn't really that easy for me.
So, did you ever go to one of these Bitcoin conferences in New York? I know it's a very big deal, and every year right now, I think they have consensus, which is organized by CoinDesk.
No, I didn't. I haven't gone to consensus. That's one of the ones that everyone says is overvalued. So I have never gone. I think that's coming up next month, though, the end of next month. I just not something I really feel like doing right now. I might attend the Litecoin Summit this year, though. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's a small event usually, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all about the community and people who know each other. I know that I was writing articles for the Litecoin Foundation, which we're getting on the
Nice.
monthly newsletter. And at one point, they started discussing organizing the first conference, which took place, I think, in November, if I'm not mistaken, October or November.
Yeah, last year,
Yeah.
right?
And
Mm-hmm.
I could not afford to buy a plane ticket and pay for accommodation in San Francisco. That's outrageous. I guess the
Yeah.
money that I make in a month would be spent on a couple of days of staying in San Francisco, which is insane.
Yeah, it's I feel like you can see everything you want to see on here, and I understand why you wouldn't want to do that. I mean, it does if it, I like I said, I look at all this from an economic perspective, and I don't feel like I'm gonna gain enough to spend the money to travel all over the place. I know there's some people that they want to be at every conference and stuff, but it's just not something I'm really that interested in. And I feel bad. Like I said, I have a dog, and then I gotta trust somebody with the dog, and I just don't like putting her in that situation either.
So how has your understanding of Bitcoin evolved over the years? As I know that there was a narrative switch recently when we agreed that it's much more important to remain a strong store of value and retain its decentralization as a core value. And I know that a few years ago, the narrative was about having a Swiss bank in your pocket. And
Mhm.
before that, it was banking the unbanked or something. We had all these catchphrases which were popular at the time and they were part of the narrative. And as we discovered much more about what Bitcoin is and how it scales and how we should deal with it as a beastly invention, then we also had these switches. And have you had any of these moments when you realize, oh, I was so wrong about it that I'm going to change my opinion?
Yeah, there's like there seems to be, different groups to try to co-opt the narrative of what it is, what it should be. And I feel like it's still a thing that I was so passionate about, 9 or 10 years ago. So um, to me, it's all of those things you just said. And I do think that for it to maintain uh, the importance and the potential that it has, um, it has to be a good store of value. But what drives a good store of value to me, uh, what makes that work is it does need to be used in commerce still, to some degree. So while some people think that it can be one or the other, I think it needs to be both. And I that is one of the things I talk about in the book. The third thing you mentioned about banking the unbanked, and that was one of the most important things to me. And one of the reasons I did write the book is so that to there's so many people that don't have access to any sort of banking and any sort of sound money, even in the United States. And it's this is like I said, this is like our chance to move towards more freedom. Like the pendulum is swinging the wrong direction still, away from freedom in a lot of the world, and freeing people of slave money, debt money, is our chance. So I like to think that it's still the project that I signed up for, or whatever, that when I got in. So I think it's all of those. I don't know. What's your take on it? Do you subscribe to one narrative more than another?
The way I see it right now is that of some kind of expensive collectible that is easier to transfer and it's impossible for governments to confiscate it. So it's not really like gold. It's more like, I guess you were around in the 90s and you saw the Furbies.
Yeah.
We had these toys which have become collectibles. If you look up on eBay, there are some rare editions of it which go for a few $1,000s, I think. So I think Bitcoin is like one of these rare collectibles that you find in limited supply. And it only exists as a cryptocurrency because it's the only way for it to remain uncensorable and decentralized and impossible for the governments to take it down. As if we established some other form of currency that we exchange in real life, that could be easily banned. And if we had central servers on which this currency is ran, then that can also go down anytime. So I think first and foremost, it's about something, even I think we can get this from the monetary policy that we identify in Bitcoin and how it's deflationary and it's bound to produce scarcity.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
PayPal. We should not compare it to PayPal because that will always be more efficient. Even though I think PayPal right now has high fees that are not really, how should I put it? It's not like they provide you something great for that kind of fee. You pay like $10 for an international transaction, and with Bitcoin it can be cheaper. I guess as Bitcoin increases in price, we're going to see $100 transactions, which encourage you to only use the Lightning Network for microtransactions, and then validate and send the coins back to the main chain whenever you feel ready to pay that kind of fee when you
Yeah,
close the
like
channel.
I understand what you're saying. It's when you talk about Bitcoin, you have to kind of separate the two different things. You have the the protocol and you have the money, uh, the blockchain. You have the network and the actual currency. So um, I, PayPal doesn't have its own currency, so it's easy for them to via their centralization move things around and still be somewhat efficient. I don't in the last year I read an article that Bitcoin did 6 times the volume of PayPal. So I don't know. I think that over time we might see PayPal go away. I could see cryptocurrencies completely taking over that sector, over that sort of service that they provide. But what you did touch on that we didn't get into before is the finite supply, and that really is the most important. Well, not the most important, but one of the most important characteristics of Bitcoin. Uh, you look at fiat money in almost every single country, and it only lasts a certain. There's always that time frame that it's going to last. I think the shelf life is 50, 60, 70 years, something like that. The average. So also, if you look at those, every country, every nation state, and you try to figure out what the circulating supply is of currency, of their currency, it's impossible. Like you can never look at you can never look at the United States or Romania or wherever you are in the world, and you can't determine how many notes that country has in circulation. So that in itself tells you there's a major problem at hand, that cryptocurrencies that are finite, specifically Bitcoin and Litecoin, you can look at the blockchain and you can say that right now there's 17.8 million Bitcoin in circulation, and tomorrow there'll be 17.8, whatever. So it's just that in itself has so much value to people who want sound money. I just think that over time, more and more people will keep jumping aboard this freedom train. Is like one analogy I would say.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you got into Litecoin too early on, and you were one of the
Mm-hmm.
first 100 people who believed in the project and embraced it. Did you get to talk to Charlie?
No, I don't know Charlie personally. I never tried to like be one of the people that had like an intimate relationship with any of the creators. I follow Charlie on Twitter and stuff like that, but it's kind of funny. I was in Litecoin so early. I think there was one exchange then, and it was Mt. Gox, and luckily I didn't hold anything on there. I actually was running a full node, which turned out to be as destructive as holding it on Mt. Gox. I had a Mac Mini at that time and had bought my first cryptocurrency on eBay, some Litecoin, and they actually I was running a full node like I said, and I crashed my Mac Mini, so those coins were gone. So, but yeah, that it's funny looking back on. That's another reason I wrote the book, was kind of to talk about some of the mistakes that I made, and try to help people, the novice coming into the space, that I don't want to see other people make the dumb mistakes I made.
Also, you didn't back up your keys, you didn't write down your private key to be able to access it.
Back then, no, I didn't. This was all, it was all a learning experience back then. There wasn't a lot of, there weren't very many tutorials. There were people like us out there educating people. So it was very, it was like a shot in the dark at that point. Learn as you go. and I just didn't have the knowledge then to do it. I was still pretty young, and I didn't understand the importance. It was a pretty new computer too, so I was thinking, the computer's less than 2 years old. What do I have to worry about? And then one day it wouldn't turn on, and the whole thing it wasn't good.
So how much richer would you be right now if you hadn't lost those coins?
I'd have a little bit more money in my blockfolio. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, I don't worry too much about it. I don't like to think about it too much, but yeah, it definitely, when the price goes up, I think about it once in a while for sure.
I guess that's terrible. But that's good for the price on the market as you have increased the scarcity by losing your coins.
Yeah, that's one of the built-in functions that Satoshi and then Charlie implemented into there. Once there's no redeeming your lost keys, which I actually think is a good thing, despite being one of the victims of stupidity in that case. Yeah, you're built-in scarcity, so you lose your keys, you're helping the network.
So what does it look like in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania in terms of paying your taxes for, I mean, are cryptocurrency transactions taxable events?
Yeah, right across the way in Ohio, they're actually starting to accept Bitcoin for small businesses taxes. So I think that what's going to happen is a lot of the I sort of read about this as well. A lot of the we're going to have nation states, and then regular states in all over the world are going to start trying to co-opt this. We've already seen a lot of them try to do their own cryptocurrencies, and they're going to try to get as many of the legit ones as they can. So I think they're finally starting to realize the importance here that people are going to opt out of money that doesn't have value. So yeah, I think that you can expect that almost everywhere. That in the very near future, within the next, I would say, 2 or 3 years, pretty much everywhere you're going to be able to pay your taxes in Bitcoin. I really think there might be a couple other ones that they accept as well. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about coins like Ripple or Stellar?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of either of those. They're both created by the same guy. Um, he was the guy that created Mt. Gox as well, and I don't put a lot of. He's another guy that kind of creates these things and then disappears. So especially with him though, he's more into like the centralization and the banking aspect, which I just don't. I didn't get this for it to be co-opted by bankers. I got in this to take that empire down, I guess. So yeah, I'm not a fan.
I guess you're also an Austrian in terms of economic
Yeah.
views, and that's incompatible with your vision.
It is, yeah. There's no way. I'm all about the primacy of the individual. The individual is greater than the state, and I don't believe in the collective and all of these people that push. We have some onus on us to take care of everybody else. So I think that the best way to take care of everybody is to transact voluntarily, and that's why I got in this to begin with. Um, yeah, so it's funny today. You see a lot of people that don't have the anarcho-capitalist instincts coming into the space, and it's a little funny to me that it's one of those things that we sort of created this environment. A lot of the people that were here first were anarcho-capitalist and anti-state proponents, free market people, and now you see people, the Winklevi twins and people like that have come in and try to, do a little co-opt and make it more about following the rules. So it's interesting. There's definitely like a binary there of like good versus evil, I think.
Also, I think that our market has grown so much just because we had this diversification of assets, and you ended up having inventions like Ethereum, which is different from Bitcoin and promises to deliver services to another kind of people.
Mhm.
Bitcoin is for anarcho-capitalists and libertarians, whereas Ethereum is for VCs and people who see the potential of creating some kind of token and maybe tokenizing some shares or stocks or bonds or commodities and putting them on the Ethereum blockchain. And there was a whole lot of different money that came through that wave into this business. And there are people who moan all the time about Bitcoin's domination being diminished over time. But I think that's a bad metric. It just shows that money has poured into something else. And that's fine because it's not like the same money would have gotten into Bitcoin. But that's something that some actors in the space choose to be ignorant of.
Yeah, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. Um, I actually think that that's one of the attributes of a free market that is really rearing its face here in a good way. Um, you know, in a free market, you're going to have competition, and that's really what's going to drive the best money is in or cryptocurrency is that we're going to have a competitive market. So let the best money emerge.
Do you like Monero? I guess that's in a nutshell the most private kind of money that you can have right now. And it's a lot like Bitcoin in many regards, except for the fact that its supply is unlimited.
Yeah, finite supply is one of the most, like I said, important characteristics to me. But I do think Monero's privacy aspect is super valuable. It would have been really nice to have that in the early days as well. People are transacting. I wasn't one of them. On the Silk Road, for example, probably would have never gone to jail. Which I, as an Austrian, again, I don't think you should be putting people into cages for victimless crimes. So Monero would have been maybe might have been harder for them to throw some people in cages over that if they would have been transacting in Monero. So I think that yeah, like I said, there's a 10 or 15 that I think have utility, and Monero is probably in the probably top 8 or something in my top 8 for sure.
I feel like we have spoken for so long, but we haven't talked too much about your personal projects and your book. So this is your chance to promote your projects and talk about what you do in the space.
Okay, yeah. I have a daily vlog that I do. It's called No Edits Crypto. You can check it out at youtube.com/Pittsburgh Hodlr, HODLR. And I put that out on Steam and YouTube, and I started a Patreon recently, so I'm trying to get some people over there to check it out. But it's not super important that you do that. But if you head over to Twitter, I'm at rbryer23. You want to check out what I'm doing on the daily, and the book really. I hope everyone checks out the book because I did put a lot of time into the book, and I'm writing volume 2 now, so that makes me happy. I've sold it in over 40 countries now, so I've met people all over the world through this book, and it's really neat. A lot of Austrians coincidentally have bought it, which I get into these talks with them, and they're being taught the same things, Keynesian stuff in their schools. So it's really cool that I've been able to sell it, and even like uh, a lot of like people in like South America and stuff like Brazil and Asia have checked it out, and it just got translated into Swedish. So I'm gonna have that available soon, and the German and Spanish translation are underway. So working on getting that stuff done on the first volume still, and the second one will be it looks like June. I'm shooting for June right now, so it'll be around the same length, maybe a little bit longer. And I'm really going to get into like the last couple years, and then some people that read the first volume want more on really how blockchains work. I didn't want to do this is a blockchain book on volume 1. I wanted to do more like the political and economic ideals and how I view them and why I view them as so important. So that's kind of like really what I got into along with network effect and stuff in volume 1. But volume 2 will be more of the intricacies and where I see it going and stuff. I'm planning on doing 3 volumes in total for now, and then I don't know what the next one will entail. If I'll do what after the three volume blockchain project Renaissance is done, I'll have to wait and see what I want to do next. But yeah, that's really what I'm doing right now. And along with my I have a small business I run online too, so that keeps me pretty busy. I've been putting in like 14-hour days lately, so not a lot of free time to go to the conferences and stuff. That's another reason I don't travel much.
Okay, so this was a great interview, and I'm glad that we got to talk and you got to present yourself and your projects. And I look forward to seeing more of your videos and maybe the second volume of your book.
Yeah, I'm gonna have the first volume sent over to you when we're done with this. I'm sorry that I already I thought I was so busy. I should have sent it over before we got on here. But maybe, like you said, it's good that you didn't read it yet, and now you can check it out when you get some free time. But I really appreciate you having me on, Vlad.
I appreciate it too. And if you have a hard copy, send it to my boss, so he
Okay.
sees that I actually produced something and I'm not useless.
Yeah, I can do that for sure.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah, I'll
much,
send him a copy of it.
Mr. Pittsburgh Hodlr.
You're welcome. I appreciate you having me on, and maybe we can do it again.
Sure, let me know when you release the second volume.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, goodbye.
All right. Have a good weekend. Thank you.